Alright, guys, so today we are going to talk about analyzing Georgia during the Civil Rights Movement, including the SNCC, Sibley Commission, admissions of Holmes and Hunter to UGA, Albany Movement, and March on Washington. Alright, so you should have your slotted notes out, so let's go ahead and get started. Alright, first off, if you'll remember, we had William Hartsfield and Ivan Allen. They also helped to bring a lot of growth to Georgia. But several things that they also did too were during the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement, these two mayors really helped or really tried to keep Atlanta calm during the Civil Rights Movement. Basically, especially Hartsfield, he got together with several business leaders, both the owner and CEO of Coca-Cola, but also several black business owners that were big in the community. They got together and they decided that they really needed to work together in order to keep the city calm. They really wanted to create Atlanta as this modern southern city. They didn't want it to be chaotic and crazy like a lot of the other cities in the South were being, especially with all the talk of integrating and things like that. Even after Hartsfield, Ivan Allen came in, and on his very first day of the job, he actually desegregated all of the city offices, came in and had all the colored and white signs taken down. He's also responsible for allowing black police officers to arrest white people, and that was a big deal. So not only did these guys work towards growth of Georgia as far as their economy and populations, but they also worked very hard on the Civil Rights Movement. Alright, so then we move on to the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Like we've talked about before, really when you have younger kids involved in something, it brings a lot to the table, especially things like a lot of new ideas, fresh ideas. They have a larger picture on life. And so with the Civil Rights Movement, young college kids and then older high school kids really got involved in this movement, trying to help things along to show people that, there wasn't really anything wrong with mixing of the races. But basically, guys, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee encouraged students to join the fight, but by using nonviolence. A lot of times you'll have teenagers and young adolescents that, they'll fight for something, but they're very quick to fight with their fists and their words instead of being peaceful about it. This committee would also train their kids on how to handle violent situations in a non-violent way. So basically, guys, you got to remember that young people played a huge part in the Civil Rights Movement. Without them and without their fresh ideas, things could have probably gotten pretty stale after a while. All right, so let's keep moving on. Here are some pictures just showing some peaceful protest. As you can see, there's, people are dressed nice. They're there. They're smiling. They're there for a cause. And if you'll notice, it's not just blacks. It's also whites. And there's a lot of white people that were involved with the Civil Rights Movement. This is actually a perfect example of violence to protesters. You have a peaceful protest right here with some kids. I'm sure they're probably young college kids, if not later high school, which turned very violent when somebody began throwing rocks. If you'll notice, the bad guy here are the people who were throwing the rocks, because these guys weren't doing anything. Okay. The Sibley Commission. Basically, guys, in 1954, Brown versus Board of Education came out and said that all schools needed to integrate because segregation of schools was unconstitutional. Well, in Georgia, when you have Herman Talmadge as your leader, that's not going to be something that's going to be very easy to overcome. And so Sibley Commission was when the Georgia General Assembly put together a group of people headed by John Sibley. And they actually went around and they held 10 different hearings across the state of Georgia. And basically what they did at these hearings was they brought the people of those communities together and asked them, would you rather integrate your schools or close them? And believe it or not, the majority of Georgia school, or the majority of Georgia people, by about 60%, said that they would rather close their schools. Obviously, schools did not close, but it was crazy to find that the majority of our state would rather close our schools than integrate. So that just shows that this was not going to be an easy battle at all. It was ongoing. Along with the integration of our public schools, you also have the integration of UGA. If you'll remember with Eugene Talmadge, UGA had already tried to integrate back in the 40s. And of course, we know how that all turned out. He fired people and we lost accreditation. Finally, in 1962, Hamilton Holmes and Charlene Hunter were the very first African American students to enroll and attend to the University of Georgia. Now, these two students were not just run-of-the-mill. Charlene actually went on to have a very nice career as a news reporter and a news anchor, whereas Hamilton Holmes went on to be a doctor. He became the first black student to attend Emory's med school as well. So they definitely made something of themselves for sure. Okay. Then we have the Albany movement. Basically, guys, like I said earlier, integration of places was really high on the list of things to do. But in Georgia, our leaders definitely didn't want that. Also, if you'll remember, like with Ellis Arnold, he worked for voting equality for all races. Basically, guys, in 1961, the Civil Rights Movement arrived in Albany. It was very heavily segregated. People were still not being allowed to vote. And so the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and many others joined together, came into Albany, and they were going to try to help voters to register, and they were going to help to work to desegregate the Albany areas. Now, Martin Luther King Jr. was asked to attend, and he did. But Albany was actually ready for this. They knew it was coming, and so instead of having this huge violent outbreak, what they wanted to do is they wanted to go ahead and get rid of the civil rights individuals without causing a huge scene. So they actually, as soon as everything started, they just started arresting them. Throwing them in jail. Basically, guys, the Albany movement was not a success. They didn't really end up integrating anything. They may have gotten a few voters registered, but all in all, it was not viewed as a success at all. Now, the same people that helped plan the Albany movement, they learned from their mistakes very quickly and realized that they needed to change some things. Finally, in 1963, the SNCC and several other civil rights organizations got together, and they led over 200,000 civil rights activists, both white and black, on a march in Washington. Basically, what they did is they marched down to the Washington Monument. At this point, this is where Martin Luther King Jr. gives his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Basically, guys, the goal of this was they wanted to bring attention to passing meaningful civil rights laws. Basically, laws that would get things done. It wasn't just people talking. They wanted to have full and fair employment. A lot of times people were still not getting jobs just because of the color of their skin. Same thing as for housing. And, of course, they still were trying to integrate education. So this was a big deal. Now, the March on Washington was pretty successful. As you can see, there were a lot of people there to hear Martin Luther King Jr. speak. This right here was the front lines of the march. You can see several of the signs talking about ending segregation in public schools, voting rights now, jobs for all, full employment. And these were just a few. Again, if you'll notice, they're all dressed nicely. They wanted people to realize that they meant business. This meant something to them. All right, and then we have the I Have a Dream speech. This was a fabulous speech that it actually, stirred a lot of emotion in a lot of people. Basically, this is definitely his most famous speech. Because of the March on Washington and the tireless workers of the Civil Rights Movement, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was finally passed. It was actually created in 1963, probably shortly after the March on Washington. Basically, what this Civil Rights Act was supposed to do was finally integrate hotels, theaters, restaurants, all of those public places. This was actually created by John F. Kennedy, but he was assassinated, so he was not able to finally sign it into law. But Lyndon B. Johnson signed it into law in 1964, and this was a big deal. It did end up bringing a lot of change to the civil rights movement. Okay. This was after JFK was assassinated, just hours after. Lyndon B. Johnson was actually taking the oath of office because they actually thought communists Cubans had killed John F. Kennedy, and they needed somebody in charge very quickly. Assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. In 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was in Nashville, or in Memphis. They were again going to lead another civil rights protest, but obviously somebody else had something different in mind. While he was standing on the balcony of the motel, James Earl Ray shot and killed Martin Luther King Jr. This is Jesse Jackson, which most of you probably have seen today. And then also a very famous Georgian was also by his side, by the name of Andrew Young. And we will talk about him once I get back to school on Monday. All right? Basically, guys, what you need to do is make sure that you have these slotted notes filled in. And then you are going to work on your assignment sheets. Please note, these are going to be due on Monday. You may have a little bit of class time on Monday, but that is it. So make sure that you are working hard. You are not working in partners, of course. Please remember that you are allowed to listen to your music. But be responsible with this, guys. Please know, don't walk out of my room with your headphones in your ears, or your earbuds in your ears, and holding your cell phone and doing everything else with it. All right, guys, work hard, and I will see you on Monday.